Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me for this brief literary discussion today of a novel which I have adored for many years. I will be discussing the novel's themes today as well as its use in the classroom in hopes of sharing a book which I believe has a great value in the world of children's literature. Now, in recent years, the critical study of young adult and children's literature has been significantly on the rise, and it's now quite a large field. So I would like to offer today some of my contributions. And to do so, we will be talking about a novel titled The True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle. It is a middle grades novel, ages 10 and up. And it was written by an author named Avi. It was published in the year 1990, and it was also awarded the Newbery Medal of Honor, as were many of Avi's other books. He wrote a variety of widely loved tales for children and teens, and he notably did not shy away from writing young girls as his protagonists, or in fact from presenting their stories as something that anyone could read. I'll try to keep this plot overview brief, as I'd like to avoid spoiling too much of the story here in case anyone would like to read it after seeing this. But be warned, I don't promise perfect spoiler-free content here. The novel is written by Charlotte after the events of the story took place, based on journals that she kept while the action was ongoing. Now, she opens by introducing both the nature and the necessity of her tale, and she emphasizes the importance of sharing the truth of the events exactly as they happened to her, exactly as she recalls them. And she believes her story to be an incredibly important one to share, and she stresses this from the very start. Her story begins as she is traveling from England to America, from her boarding school to join her family at their family estate. Her voyage is on a ship called the Seahawk, which is owned by her father's shipping company. There are intended to be two other families on the ship who both have children, which was arranged by her father. However, both of the families are unable for various reasons to make it to the voyage, and Charlotte ends up the lone passenger on this essentially cargo merchant ship. There are bad omens absolutely everywhere about this ship, but against what is most certainly Charlotte's better judgment, she still ends up on board the Seahawk. After some time to adjusting to the feeling of being at sea, she makes her way to the kitchen, and she makes a sort of tentative friendship with the cook, who is an old black man named Zachariah. He tells her, "Miss Doyle is so young. I am so old. Surely there's something similar in that. And you, the sole girl, and I, the one black, are special on this ship. In short, we begin with two things in common, enough to begin a friendship." Zachariah ultimately becomes her fastest friend, and he is the only one to maintain his trust in her throughout the novel. Charlotte very soon finds her life in utter chaos, as she becomes a little too close of the action happening between the captain and crew of this ship. Before long, she finds herself distrusted by both sides, and she must navigate an entirely foreign social scheme. In the end, Charlotte finds herself bonded actually with the crew, to the surprise of all parties, and she also finds herself permanently changed after being exposed to a completely new lifestyle without any of the restrictions she was raised with. Besides Charlotte, the characters with the most impact on the story are Captain Andrew Jaggery and the cook Zachariah. Several other of the sailors serve important roles, but ultimately they are all supporting cast for this main trio, Charlotte, and the foils of Jaggery and Zachariah. Jaggery and Zachariah, that said, are as unlike as two men can get. Charlotte can readily see this, but she also sees early on that, quote, each of them in his own way was courting me, unquote. Not in a romantic sense, of course, although Charlotte is often made to blush by Jaggery's manipulative flattery. And both hope to have her on their side when the conflict comes to a head. Or, as Charlotte puts it, quote, for friendship, end quote. Jaggery is manipulative and cunning, but sophisticated and charming to Charlotte's untrained eyes. He is a man who appears strong in every way, and Charlotte, unsurprisingly, is drawn to him from the start. He reminds her, she says, of her father. Zachariah, on the other hand, is an old and withered man who works in the galley of the ship, but was formerly a preacher, sailor, and more. He is kind and gentle, but at the same time, Charlotte often perceives him as forgetting his station when he is speaking with her. Charlotte herself is generally concerned with what is the right thing to do, although her definition of right is forced to evolve as the novel goes on. The novel grapples with many themes of education, order, truth, and acceptance. Charlotte has been raised by a man who values order above all else, and Charlotte has been trained to have the same mindset all her life. As a result, it is easy for Jaggery to manipulate her into his spy and get her to act exactly as he wants, without her even realizing it. However, what he does not expect is the dominance of her morals over her respect for order or fear of those who enforce it. In an essay on the poisonous pedagogy, which values conformity and order and suppresses individuality, and is generally an ideology associated with child-rearing strategies. So analyzing this ideology in literature, Milena Kostic discusses how this ideology places individuals into two categories of good and bad. She says that in this view, quote, the good ones give confirmation to the dominant ideology without the need to penetrate deeper into its meaning, and prioritize any form of authority over free will, individual contemplation, or creativity. Given that Charlotte has been trained in exactly such a way at an English boarding school, Jaggery is blindsided when she puts her individual contemplations of his abject cruelty ahead of his authority. Rather than giving confirmation to the dominant ideology, Charlotte does in fact penetrate deeper into its meaning and analyze whether or not Jaggery's position as captain truly does give him the right to treat his crew with the cruelty that he does. Entertainment industries have in the past had issues with not making girls protagonists in their stories because girls' stories are somehow less universally relatable than boys' stories. And in a study titled Gender Representation in Children's Literature, 1900 to 1984, researchers Elizabeth Grauerholz and Bernice Pescosolido found that the presence of female protagonists in children's literature did not necessarily reflect the changing social positions of women, or at least did so, quote, at a substantial lag, unquote. However, they also noted that there was generally more freedom for child protagonists, with gains seen for girls but not for women. Avi writes after the years that these studies analyzed, but the numbers are not linear, and it is no secret that industries would rather market media and toys to boys than girls. But Avi places girls at the center of several of his books and gives them interesting and unique challenges to tackle. Without giving them too much of a not like other girls vibe, Avi allows his female protagonists to have their adventures, grow and change as people, and choose their own path. He presents these things generally without too much flourish, letting these girls do things because they are right, or interesting, or natural, without much thought to what other girls would do in the situation. Others in the story certainly have their doubts about a girl doing men's work, but Charlotte herself seeks only to do what is right and survive her messy situation, as do Avi's other female protagonists. Their narratives are about decision-making and growth, not about any competition or comparison. It's a refreshing and sympathetic angle on the coming-of-age tale for young women. Many of these female protagonists, including Charlotte Doyle, have the adventures typically associated with boys' coming-of-age stories, which bridges a gap in children's literature and encourages boys to read about the stories and emotions of girls. Avi does all of this not only with these engaging storylines, but with vivid descriptions, carefully crafted suspense, and strong, well-developed characters. In relation to this project, I interviewed my father, who has taught this book in a middle school classroom before. He has previously taught middle school, specifically 7th grade language arts, and he currently teaches high school Latin. And so I will include some clips here of our discussion. I'll let him speak for himself on the importance that he found in this novel, but here you go. What made you, as an educator, decide to bring this book into your classroom? What skills did you aim to teach with it, and what made it worthwhile to you?
Okay, it's nice to come back to books like this, books that I have taught in the past, and then remind me of these certain themes that are very key in this book of acceptance, adaptation, social positions, and the idea of what's natural and not natural are things that never lose relevance, whether with young people or society at large. But it was because I wanted to teach a certain aim. Of course, the themes that I mentioned earlier, those are always things that are. Theme is a thing that is something we really need to try out for the middle school mind. But just I wanted to sharpen their literary skills, and I can say all that. I can talk about motive and characterization through this and setting. But really, what I had noticed was that in a certain way they didn't know how to read. They did not know how to read dramatically. They could process words on a page. But I noticed that punctuation was something that it might as well have been dirt on the page. They didn't recognize that things like punctuation and that italics, that these things are meant as clues as to how to read it so that they can make the movie in their head. And I really set out to try and help make the movie in their head.
You mentioned it was a middle school group you were working with, 7th grade specifically. So how did you find that age group responded to Charlotte's attitudes and actions, and did her character have an impact on them?
I have to say, yeah, that it did. It is extremely important when you are teaching something like middle school language arts. Everyone has to be there. Someone in that class dislikes that class more than all the others, and you've just got to find ways to keep them locked in. And so it was in dramatic reading that I really decided that was going to be the thing to do it. And I worked really hard to try and bring out my best middle schooler as I did all those things. In the end, yes, they did, because they could certainly appreciate the conflicts that a 13-year-old girl has with all of those around them. And it wasn't just the girls that could appreciate that; the boys could as well. The boys could certainly appreciate the conflicts with figures of authority, whether that's the captain who might be in the persona of a teacher, or the conflict that ultimately that Charlotte has with her father that she perhaps wasn't even aware of early in the novel, but she becomes painfully aware of it near the end of it.
Yeah. To bring things to a close, The True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle is a novel which values truth, acceptance, and inner strength. As we have now seen, Avi's work provides impactful commentary on the structures that create order. While order is often comforting to Charlotte, she must ultimately escape it and adapt to her environment in order to both grow into her own person and survive her journey to America. She is given an unusual test of her childhood education, making for an atypical coming-of-age narrative for a young girl like herself. However, the narration feels genuine, determined, and honest, and Charlotte shows young people a strength of character that is both natural to her and quite admirable. While it makes a great message for young people, I would also recommend this novel for readers of any age for an enjoyable and enriching experience. So again, thank you for joining me for this discussion. Okay, that is the end of the content, but I do have a couple of closing notes for the way out. First and foremost, I have some very important thank yous. Of course, thank you to my father for having this discussion with me and for the interview section of this. I would also like to thank my dear friend Chloe, who made all of the title cards for this video. I very, very greatly appreciated her help with that, particularly her offer to help with that, because it made a huge difference to me, because while I am an utter tech noob, Chloe actually knows what she's doing and was able to whip these up quite quickly and easily for me, so I really, really do appreciate the help there. And I would also like to thank my friend Amy, who gave me some recommendations and suggestions and, beginner tips for the editing process of this video, which I really appreciated, because I really did not know where to start, to be honest, with this. Outside of those thank yous, I will also be editing and uploading the full interview with my dad. We talked for quite a bit longer than I was able to include in this video, so if you thought his answers sounded interesting, check out the description, or maybe I'll figure out how to use the end card links or something once the video is uploaded, and I will put a link somewhere on this video to that full interview so you can see everything he said and everything we talked about there. Finally, I did invest some money in this filming setup, and I would like to make more video essays. So, if perchance you are not my literary studies professor and you're watching this video and would like to see more video essays from me, I know this one was a bit niche, but it was for an assignment, and there's time limits to such things, and I can talk for absolutely hours about a lot of different things. So, if there's people who would like to hear that, I would love to do it. Let me know. Give me a reason to use this cute mic again. Again, if you are not my professor or my family and you actually watched this video, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And again, I would love to do more of it, so leave a comment or something, like the video. I don't know what people say. Actually, I do. Like, comment, and subscribe, I guess.